The first time Rachel laughed in divorce court, I knew she had not come there to end our marriage. She had come there to bury my side of it before I ever got to speak. I was standing alone at the respondent's table in my only Navy suit, the one with the sleeve button missing, while her attorney arranged 3 folders in front of her like the morning was decided. When Judge Mercer asked who would be appearing for me, I cleared my throat and said, "Your Honor, I will be representing myself." Rachel covered her mouth too late. The sound still slipped out, bright and small and cruel, the kind of laugh people say for someone who has walked into the wrong room without knowing it. A few heads turned. Her lawyer, Patricia Sloan, did not laugh, but she looked at me with that polished sympathy professionals use when they believe the paperwork has already won. I kept my hands flat on the table because the green certified mail card in my jacket pocket felt like it was burning through the lining. It was folded once, creased through the middle, and soft from the number of times I had touched it before walking inside. To anyone else, it was just a scrap from the post office, the kind of thing you throw away with coupons and grocery ads. To me, it was the first object in 4 weeks that made Rachel's story feel less like confusion and more like a trap. 4 weeks earlier, I had still been living in our split-level house outside Columbus, sleeping in the guest room because Rachel said space would help us talk without fighting. We were polite in the way people become polite when love has left the house but the furniture has not. She made coffee. I took the trash out. We discussed the electric bill like 2 co-workers sharing a break room. Then one Thursday evening, while I was changing the furnace filter in the hall closet, she leaned against the kitchen counter and asked if I had checked my mail lately. Not our mailbox. My mail. I remember the way she said it, soft enough to sound casual, sharp enough to make me look up. I told her everything important came to the house. She shrugged and said, "Maybe you should check the old apartment just in case." That was the first strange thing. I had not lived at Briar Glen Apartments in almost 3 years. Rachel knew that better than anyone because she had helped me carry boxes out of Unit 2C the week before our wedding. She had stood in that empty living room, laughing as I tried to fit a floor lamp into the back seat of my Chevy. She had signed a change of address card with me. So why would she suddenly mention a mailbox I had no legal reason to check? I drove there the next morning before work, feeling ridiculous the whole way. The leasing office was closed, and the mailboxes sat outside under a faded green awning. My old slot still had the same dent on the corner. I should not have had a key, but the property manager had once given me a spare when the lock jammed, and I had never thrown it away. Inside were 2 pizza flyers, a water bill addressed to current resident, and a thin white notice from the county courthouse, bent from being shoved into a box too small for it. My name was on it. My old address was on it, and the date stamped across the top was already 12 days old. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes with the engine off, reading the same sentence again and again. Failure to respond may result in default. Default. That word did not sound like divorce. It sounded like a door closing while I stood on the porch, still holding the key. When I got home, Rachel was waiting in the kitchen, stirring tea she never drank. She looked at the envelope in my hand, then at my face, and asked one question before I said a word. "Did you miss something important?" I looked at Rachel across the kitchen island and realized she already knew the answer. Not guessed. Knew. There was no surprise in her eyes, no concern, not even the awkward softness people use when bad news lands at the wrong time. She looked almost relieved, as if the courthouse envelope had finally found me late enough to be useful to her. I placed it beside her untouched tea and asked why my divorce notice had been sent to an apartment I had left years ago. Rachel did not blink. She said, maybe they used whatever address they had. Then she picked up her mug with both hands, even though the tea had gone cold. That was the second strange thing. Rachel was careful with words when she was lying. She never over-explained. She left gaps and let the other person feel unreasonable for trying to fill them. I asked her and she filed. She said Patricia handled that. I asked whether Patricia had my current address. Rachel smiled without showing teeth and said, "You live here, Jacob. Everyone knows where you live." That sentence should have helped. Instead, it made the room feel smaller, because if everyone knew where I lived, then why had the court send my notice somewhere else? I took the envelope to my home office and spread everything across the desk. The notice was not the full petition. It was a warning that I had missed a response deadline. The paper said service had been completed at my last known address, which made no sense because my driver license, tax returns, bank statements, vehicle registration, and every bill since the wedding all used our current house on Maple Ridge Drive. I opened my laptop and searched the case number on the county court website. The docket loaded slowly, like it was trying to make me regret looking. There it was. Rachel Miller versus Jacob Miller. Petition filed. Service requested. Service completed. Motion for default pending. My stomach went still when I saw the next line. Affidavit of personal service uploaded by Eric Holden. Personal service. Not mail. Not forwarding. Someone had sworn under penalty that they had put divorce papers into my hands. I read the line 3 times, waiting for it to become less impossible. Then I clicked the document link. The scan was blurry, but clear enough. Eric Holden claimed he served me at Briar Glen Apartments, Unit 2C, on a Tuesday afternoon at 2:30. He described the recipient as a white male, approximately 6 feet 2 inches, heavy beard, black rectangular glasses, wearing a gray work jacket. I am 5 feet 11. I have not had a beard since Rachel asked me to shave it before our engagement photos. I do not wear glasses. And that Tuesday afternoon, I had been at Franklin Machine Supply, clocked into a maintenance audit with 12 other employees and a badge scanner that recorded every entrance and exit. That was the first time fear turned into something cleaner. Not confidence yet. Not anger. More like the moment fog lifts enough for you to see a fence line. I printed the affidavit, then checked the envelope again. Tucked behind the notice was the green certified mail card, folded and half stuck to the inside seam. It was not addressed to Maple Ridge Drive. It was addressed to Briar Glen. But the signature box did not show my name. It showed 1 crooked line and 3 letters that looked like J.M. only if you wanted them to. I did not sleep much that night. Rachel stayed in the bedroom with the door closed. At midnight, I heard her on the phone, voice low, saying he found the notice, not the packet. In the morning, I drove back to Briar Glen and found the old property manager, who stared at my printed affidavit and said something that made my hands go cold. She said a man had come asking about me 2 weeks earlier, and he had not been trying to find me at all. Then she slid a visitor card toward me, and the company logo on it matched Eric Holden's affidavit perfectly in blue ink. The visitor card had been sitting in a plastic tray under the leasing office counter, the kind of thing most people sign without thinking. Name, date, company, reason for visit. Eric Holden had written his name and listed North County Civil Service as his company. Under reason, he had not written delivery, service, or legal documents. He had written address confirmation. That phrase unsettled me more than the affidavit had. If Eric came to confirm an address, then he already knew there was a question. If he already knew there was a question, why did he later swear he had handed papers to me in Unit 2C? The property manager, Linda Carver, lowered her voice. She said Eric had asked whether I still lived there. She told him no, and she remembered being clear about it because she had pulled my old tenant file and seen my move-out date. Then she pointed toward the parking lot and said my old neighbor might remember more. Howard Ellis still lived 2 doors down from where I used to be, retired, neat, and suspicious of anyone who knocked before lunch. He opened the door with one hand on the chain and recognized me after a second. Jacob from 2C, he said, like the last 3 years had only been a long weekend. I asked if a man from a service company had come by asking about me. Howard squinted toward the stairwell as if the memory was written on the railing. He said yes, a white guy in a blue polo, maybe late 30s, carrying a clipboard but not enough papers to be delivering anything. Then Howard said something that shifted the whole shape of the case. The man had asked, he does not live here anymore, right? Now where can I find him? Now do you know his new address? He had asked for confirmation that I was gone. Howard told him I had moved when I got married. The green certified mail card inside my folder seemed to gain weight. This was no longer just a wrong address. Wrong addresses happen. Old forms get copied. Clerks make mistakes. But a process server who asks whether someone does not live somewhere and then swears he personally served that person, there is not a mistake. It is a story with a signature at the bottom. Howard invited me inside and found an old notebook beside his recliner. He kept notes on strange visitors because packages disappeared in the building every December. On the page for that Tuesday, he had written, "Serviceman asked about Jacob, Rachel car outside?" The question mark stopped me. I asked what he meant by Rachel car. Howard said he saw a silver crossover parked near the mailboxes, the same color and model as Rachel's Honda CR-V. He was not certain enough to swear it was hers, but he remembered the Ohio State sticker in the back window because he hated Ohio State. Rachel's Honda had that sticker because her father bought it for her as a joke. I took a photo of Howard's notebook with his permission, then asked him to write a short statement about Eric's question. He did not like courts, but he liked being used even less. He wrote slowly at his kitchen table, pressing hard enough to leave marks on the next page. By the time I left Briar Glen, I had a visitor card, a property manager statement, a neighbor note, and one ugly possibility I was not ready to say out loud. Rachel had not simply taken advantage of a bad address. She may have helped build one. That evening, she texted me from upstairs while I sat in the home office below. "Patricia says you should not embarrass yourself by fighting procedure. It will only cost more." I read the message twice, then opened the court website again. There was one link I had not clicked because it sounded harmless: service correspondence history. When it opened, the first line showed my current home address. The second line showed a manual change. The third line showed the old apartment. And beside that change was a username I did not recognize. I stared at the username on the court website until the letters stopped looking like letters. It was not Rachel's name, not Patricia Sloan's, and not Eric Holden's. It was a string of numbers with the initials PS at the end, the kind of login that meant nothing to a husband sitting alone at a desk after midnight. Still, it proved one thing. The address on my divorce case had not drifted backward by accident. Someone had gone into the file and moved me from Maple Ridge Drive to an apartment I had left before Rachel and I ever bought curtains together. The next morning, I took a personal day from Franklin Machine Supply and drove to the county courthouse before the security line got long. I did not wear the Navy suit. I wore jeans, a blue shirt, and the tired expression of a man trying not to look desperate in a building where desperation seemed to echo off the marble floors. At the records window, a clerk with silver hair and reading glasses looked up from her monitor. Her nameplate said Marianne Brooks. I slid the case number under the glass and asked for the service correspondence history. She asked whether I was an attorney. I said no. She asked whether I was a party to the case. I said I was the respondent, if the court still considered me one. That made her pause, not with pity, with attention. She pulled up the case, typed for a while, then looked from her screen to my driver license. "Maple Ridge Drive," she said. "That is your current address?" "Yes, ma'am." For almost 3 years. Her fingers moved again. The printer behind her woke up and began coughing pages into a tray. Then her face changed. It was small, but I saw it, because by then I had learned to watch people's faces the way Rachel watched deadlines. Marianne lowered her voice and asked if I had received the original petition. I told her I had received only a late notice of my old apartment. She did not comment on that. Clerks are careful people. Instead, she placed 3 printed pages on the counter and circled one line with a black pen. The line said manual address correction. The timestamp was 6 minutes after the petition had been accepted by the court. 6 minutes. Not days later after a returned envelope. Not weeks later after confusion. 6 minutes after the case was born, someone changed where the court believed I could be reached. Marianne pointed to another column. "Source," she said. "Petitioner portal submission." The words did not accuse Rachel out loud, but they stepped close enough to breathe on her name. I felt my anger rise, then fall into something colder. Anger would make me look like the man Rachel needed me to be. Cold facts would make me harder to erase. I asked for the full name tied to the login. Marianne shook her head and said she could not release internal account ownership without a court order, but she could give me the public service log and certified mailing scan. She printed another form, highlighted a box, and told me to request a certified copy, not a regular copy. Certified, she said, matters when someone says the record is just your version. That was the first time in days someone had given me a tool instead of a warning. I paid $12 and waited on a bench while a deputy carried files between rooms. Across the hall, A young couple argued quietly over custody paperwork. An older man held a folder to his chest like it was keeping him upright. I looked down at the green certified mail card in my own folder and noticed a barcode along the bottom edge I had ignored before. When Marion called my name, she was holding a sealed printout. Her expression was different again. She slid it toward me and tapped the barcode line once. Then she said, "You need to read the forwarding note before your hearing." I opened the first page, and the contact number printed beside the old apartment address was not mine. The contact number printed beside the old Briar Glen address had 10 digits I knew by muscle memory. It was Rachel's old cell number, the one she stopped using after we moved to Maple Ridge, because she said the service was terrible in the neighborhood. I had paid that final bill myself. I remembered the last 4 digits because they matched the code for our garage keypad back then. For a few seconds, the courthouse hallway tilted into something quiet and airless. Rachel had not only let the court send papers to the wrong place. Someone had given the court her number as the contact attached to my wrong place. Marion watched me read it, but she did not ask what I saw. She only said, "If you believe there's an issue with service, file a written objection before the default hearing." Written, not verbal. I nodded, but the word default kept pulling harder than everything else. I knew it meant failure to answer. I did not know it could become a weapon. In the courthouse copy room, I fed quarters into an old machine and printed every public document connected to the case. Rachel's petition was plain enough at first. Division of property, temporary possession of the house, separate bank access. Then I reached Patricia Sloan's motion. It said I had been properly notified and had chosen not to participate. Chosen. That word did more damage than the legal language around it. It turned a missing envelope into my character. It made me sound careless, arrogant, absent. Under requested relief, Patricia asked the court to grant Rachel temporary exclusive use of our home on Maple Ridge Drive, access to a joint savings account for attorney fees, and reimbursement because my refusal to respond had forced unnecessary litigation. I sat beside the copier with warm pages sliding into my lap, understanding for the first time what Rachel's laugh had really meant. She was not laughing because I was alone. She was laughing because the paperwork said I had already abandoned the room before walking into it. On the last page, there was a proposed default order and sign prepared in advance. My name appeared 8 times. Not as a husband, not even as a person, as the respondent who failed to appear, failed to answer, failed to cooperate. I thought about every calm dinner Rachel had made while those words waited in a courthouse file. I thought about her asking whether I'd checked my mail, not because she worried I had missed something, but because she needed to know how close the trap was to being discovered. That night, I did not confront her. Confrontation would have given her time to smooth the edges. Instead, I drove to Franklin Machine Supply and asked my supervisor, Dale, for my badge records from the Tuesday Eric claimed to serve me. Dale raised one eyebrow, but printed the log without questions. It showed I entered the plant at 6:48 in the morning, scanned into the maintenance cage at 2:12 in the afternoon, and left after 5. At 2:30, the exact minute Eric swore he put papers in my hand, I was inside a fenced industrial building 20 miles from Briar Glen, signing off on a compressor inspection with 3 technicians. Dale added a note on company letterhead confirming the audit schedule. That was the first paper in the stack that felt like it belonged to me. Not a trap, not an accusation, proof of where I had actually been. When I came home, Rachel was in the dining room with her laptop open. She closed it too quickly. I saw only one line before the screen went dark, but it was enough to keep me awake until sunrise. Proposed order should emphasize respondent silence. The sender name above, it was not Patricia's. It was Eric Holden's company account, copied to someone with initials I had seen on the court login. I stood in the hallway with my folder under my arm and finally understood the next question was not whether Rachel knew. It was who had been helping her write my absence before I disappeared inside the file. The morning of the default hearing, Rachel arrived as if the courthouse belonged to her. She wore a cream blazer I had bought her for a conference in Cincinnati, pearl earrings, and the calm smile of someone waiting for a formality to finish. Patricia Sloan stood beside her with a leather trial bag and a yellow legal pad already marked with tabs. I carried one plain folder, my badge record from Franklin Machine Supply, the certified service log, Howard Ellis's statement, Linda Carver's visitor card copy, and the green certified mail card sealed inside a clear sleeve. Rachel looked at the folder, then looked at my empty chair where an attorney should have been. Her smile widened. When Judge Mercer called our case, Patricia rose first. She spoke smoothly, almost gently, telling the court that I had been served properly, that I had failed to answer, and that Rachel had been placed in an unfair position by my refusal to participate. Refusal. There was again, dressed up for the bench. Judge Mercer asked whether I understood that the court could proceed on the motion for default. I said I understood, but I objected to the service. Rachel gave a quiet laugh, shorter than the one at the beginning, but sharper. Patricia touched her arm under the table, too late to stop it. Judge Mercer looked over his glasses and asked, "Mrs. Miller, is there something amusing?" Rachel straightened. "No, Your Honor. Jacob just tends to make simple things complicated." That sentence landed exactly where she wanted it to. A few people in the gallery shifted. I felt the old instinct rise, the need to defend my personality instead of the facts. I let it pass. Then I asked permission to question the process server, whose affidavit supported the default. Patricia objected, saying the affidavit was sufficient. Judge Mercer glanced at my folder and said, "If the respondent challenges service, I will hear a few questions." Eric Holden walked to the witness table in a navy polo with the same company logo from Linda's visitor card. He looked less confident than his affidavit sounded. Patricia led him through the basics. Yes, he was licensed. Yes, he served papers regularly. Yes, he remembered this case. Then it was my turn. I asked him where he served me. Briar Glen Apartments, Unit 2C, he said. I asked whether he confirmed I live there. He said the address was listed in the file. That was not an answer, so I asked again. Did you personally confirm that I lived there before claiming you handed me legal papers? His eyes moved toward Patricia. She stood, but Judge Mercer told him to answer. Eric said he had spoken to someone at the property. I asked who. He could not remember. I asked him to describe the man he gave the packet to. He opened his copy of the affidavit like it could rescue him. White male, around 6'2", beard, glasses, gray jacket. I waited 1 second before saying, "Your Honor, I am 5'11". I do not wear glasses, and I was clean-shaven on that date." Rachel looked at me then, not smiling, but annoyed, as if I had stepped off the path she painted. Patricia said physical descriptions were approximate. I nodded and handed the bailiff my company badge log. At 2:30 that afternoon, I told the judge I was inside Franklin Machine Supply, 20 miles away, scanned into a maintenance audit. The judge studied the page. Eric swallowed. It was a small sound, but in that room it felt loud. I could feel the balance shift, not enough to win, but enough to make everyone stop assuming I had lost. Then Judge Mercer asked for the original service scan. Marianne Brooks rose from the clerk station and moved to her monitor. Rachel leaned toward Patricia and whispered something I could not hear. Marianne clicked once, then froze because the screen showed a note none of us had mentioned yet. She looked from the monitor to the green card in my sleeve, and for the first time, Judge Mercer asked the question Rachel had avoided all week out loud. Judge Mercer leaned forward and said, "Whose phone number is attached to the forwarding note?" Nobody moved. Even Patricia Sloan turned her head toward the clerk's monitor as if the question had not really occurred to her either. Marianne Brooks did not answer right away. She enlarged the scanned, certified mail record, then compared it with the public service log. Her shoulders tightened. That was the moment from the title, although nobody in that courtroom knew it. The clerk froze, not because she was frightened, but because the system had just shown her something that should not have been there. Judge Mercer repeated the question, slower. Marianne cleared her throat and said the contact number on the forwarding note was not associated with the respondent account. Patricia stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "Your Honor, I would object to speculation about account ownership." The judge looked at her. "I did not ask for speculation. I asked what the court record says." Marianne glanced at me for half a second, then read the number aloud. I did not have to say anything. Rachel knew I recognized it. Her face changed in a way only a husband would notice. Not panic yet. Calculation. like she was rearranging the story while everyone watched. I raised my hand slightly and said, "Your Honor, that number belonged to my wife before we moved to our current house." Patricia turned toward Rachel, and for the first time all morning, her expression had no polish left. Rachel whispered something fast, but the judge lifted one hand. "No saidva." Not yet. Then Marianne clicked into the address correction detail. The courtroom had been quiet before, but this was a different kind of quiet. It was the kind that arrives when people realize they are no longer listening to an argument. They are watching a record speak. The screen showed 3 entries. Original respondent address, Maple Ridge Drive. Manual address correction, Briar Glen Apartments. Correction source, petitioner portal submission. Timestamp, 6 minutes after petition acceptance. Judge Mercer asked Marianne to print the page. The printer behind her started humming, and that little mechanical sound felt louder than Rachel's laugh had been. I kept my eyes on the green certified mail card inside its clear sleeve. It had looked pathetic in my hand when I walked in, a wrinkled piece of postal paper against a lawyer's leather bag. Now everyone was staring at the same card because its barcode matched the mailing scan, but not Eric Holden's sworn story. Patricia tried to recover. She said address corrections could be administrative and that many portals allow authorized representatives to update contact information. Judge Mercer asked who submitted this one. Marian hesitated. The public page shows petitioner portal submission, Your Honor. Internal user identification is restricted unless ordered by the court. The judge nodded once. Then I asked Eric a question I had saved because I was afraid of wasting it too early. "Mr. Holden, when you went to Briar Glen, did anyone tell you I no longer live there?" Eric shifted in the witness chair. "I do not recall. I placed Linda Carver's visitor card and Howard Ellis's written statement on the evidence table." The judge read them silently. Eric's jaw moved once, but no words came out. Rachel stared straight ahead. Her confidence was no longer leaking out. It had stopped existing. Judge Mercer looked from the certified mail card to the manual correction printout, then to the proposed default order Patricia had prepared. He said, "I'm not entering default today." Rachel inhaled as if she had been corrected in public, which was exactly what had happened. But the judge was not finished. He turned to Marianne and said, "Pull the audit log for the service affidavit." Patricia objected again, this time less smoothly. Judge Mercer did not look at her. "If service is the foundation of this motion, then the foundation is what we're going to inspect." Marianne began typing. Eric stared at the monitor like a man watching weather come across the lake. Then the judge asked one more question, and this time even Rachel looked afraid. "What time was that affidavit uploaded?" Marianne typed for what felt like a full minute, though it was probably less than 10 seconds. Nobody in that courtroom looked comfortable anymore. Patricia Sloan kept one hand on her yellow pad, but she had stopped writing. Eric Holden sat with his elbows close to his sides, suddenly smaller in the chair. Rachel stared at the judge, not at me, because looking at me would have meant admitting I was still there. Then Marianne read the audit entry. Affidavit uploaded at 9:14 in the morning. Judge Mercer looked down at the affidavit already in front of him. "Mr. Holden, your sworn statement says personal service occurred at 2:30 in the afternoon." Eric opened his mouth, but nothing useful came out. The room did the math before anyone said it. 9:14 came before 2:30. The proof of service had been uploaded more than 5 hours before Eric claimed he handed me the papers. For the first time that morning, I felt no need to explain myself. The timeline was explaining for me. Patricia stood again, but slower now, careful not to sound as shaken as she looked. "Your Honor, there may have been a clerical upload placeholder or draft entry." Judge Mercer turned to Marianne. "Does the audit log indicate draft status?" Marianne clicked once. "No, Your Honor. Filed document. Accepted for docketing." The judge looked at Eric. "Did you file a completed affidavit before service occurred?" Eric said he would need to review his office records. That was not an answer. It was a hallway. Judge Mercer did not walk into it. He asked whether Eric had any independent proof that he handed papers to me at Briar Glen. Eric said his affidavit was his proof. The judge removed his glasses and set them on the bench. "That affidavit is now the document in question." I watched Rachel's hands disappear beneath the table. Maybe she was clasping them. Maybe she was texting. I could not see. But Patricia could. She leaned toward Rachel and whispered sharply enough for the first row to hear one word. Stop. The bailiff's eyes moved to Rachel's lap. Rachel placed both hands on the table, empty. That small correction told me more than any confession could have. Judge Mercer ordered Eric to remain available and directed Mary Ann to print a certified copy of the audit log. Then he turned to Patricia and said the proposed default order was denied pending review of service. Denied. Not delayed. Not adjusted. Denied. The word moved through me with such force I had to grip the edge of my folder. I had not won my divorce. I had not saved the house, the savings account, or anything else yet. But Rachel had tried to turn my absence into a legal fact, and the court had just discovered the absence was manufactured. Judge Mercer addressed me next. Mr. Miller, you will be given time to file a response. You may also file any motion concerning improper service. I nodded because if I spoke too quickly, my voice might have betrayed how close I had come to losing without being heard. Rachel finally looked at me. Her face held no apology, only the wounded disbelief of someone whose plan had depended on my silence lasting a little longer. I almost wanted her to say something cruel. Cruelty would have felt normal. Instead, she whispered to Patricia, I thought Eric handled it. Judge Mercer heard enough to look up. Patricia closed her eyes for half a second. That was when Mary Ann returned from the printer with the certified audit log and the scanned green card clipped together. She handed them to the bailiff, but before he reached the bench, one loose page slipped sideways. I saw the header, Supplemental Service Note. I had never seen that document before. Neither, apparently, had Patricia. Her face tightened when Judge Mercer picked it up. Then he read the first line silently, looked at Rachel, and asked why my wife had signed a delivery exception request in my name. And the courtroom went quiet because that signature was not on the affidavit, but it looked exactly like mine from years ago. Judge Mercer did not accuse anyone. He did something worse for Rachel. He slowed the room down until every detail had to stand where it was. He asked Mary Ann to identify the supplemental service note by date, source, and attachment type. Mary Ann read carefully, as if one wrong syllable might give the paper more power than it deserved. Delivery exception request, submitted through petitioner self-service, same day as manual address correction, attached signature authorization. Judge Mercer looked at me. Mr. Miller, did you sign a delivery exception allowing service correspondence to be redirected to Briar Glen Apartments? I said no. My voice came out calm, unfamiliar. He asked if the signature resembled mine. I looked at the page the bailiff placed before me. It did. That was the worst part. Not perfect, but close enough to make a stranger hesitate. The J had the same long hook I used when signing checks years earlier. The M leaned right, just like mine did before I changed my signature after a bank mix-up. Rachel knew that old version. She had seen it on our mortgage papers, birthday cards, on insurance forms while we watched television. Patricia Sloan stood motionless. Whatever Rachel had told her, this had not been part of the professional version. Judge Mercer asked Mary Ann whether the petitioner's self-service account had an email on file. Mary Ann checked the restricted audit screen, then answered what the judge allowed. The account was created using Rachel Miller's verified email address. The username that had looked meaningless suddenly became simple. PS did not mean Patricia Sloan. It meant petitioner self-service. Rachel had not needed her lawyer to change my address. She had used the portal herself. Rachel finally spoke. She said she thought the form only corrected an old mailing issue. Her voice had lost its clean edges. Judge Mercer asked why my old signature was attached. Rachel looked at Patricia. Patricia looked at the bench. No one rescued her. I expected to feel satisfaction, but what moved through me was quieter. For weeks, I had wondered whether I was overreacting, whether a bad address and a careless process server had become a story only because I was scared. Now the room itself had answered. I had not imagined the trap. I had nearly been written out of my own case by a paper version of myself. Judge Mercer denied the default request, set aside the proof of service pending review, ordered proper service to my current address, and gave me 30 days to respond. He also ordered certified copies of the service log, audit log, green certified mail card, and delivery exception request preserved in the file. He did not grant me revenge. He gave me something cleaner, a place to stand. Eric Holden was instructed to remain available for inquiry. Patricia quietly withdrew the proposed order from her stack. Rachel sat beside her without looking at me, her pearl earrings still, her cream blazer too bright under the courtroom lights. When the hearing recessed, I walked back to the record's window. Marianne did not smile, but her eyes softened as she stamped the certified copy. The green mail card lay on top, clipped to the audit log, no longer a strange scrap from an old mailbox. It had a court seal across one corner now. Evidence. I ran my thumb near the crease, careful not to touch the stamp. Rachel passed behind me with Patricia, and for a second our reflection met in the dark glass above the counter. She looked like she wanted me to say something, maybe to give her anger she could use, maybe to prove I was the difficult man her paperwork had described. I said nothing. Outside, the air smelled like rain on hot pavement. I sat in my truck before starting the engine and placed the certified packet on the passenger seat. I had walked into court alone, but I was not leaving erased. The car that was supposed to prove I had been notified had proved the opposite. It proves silence can be manufactured, but it can also leave a barcode, a timestamp, and one signature that tells the truth.